Depending on what kind of photography, I mean, as photographers, most of us are not building the presence nationally. I mean, yeah, we like right now for the headshot at conferences, and we are kind of like we rank nationally for this, like on Google, because we get jobs, from coast to coast. But either way, even when we moved, we always try to have the presence locally. So when people think about photography, they will think about us, you know and by walking, making the face-to-face contact. We went to restaurants. I did food photography. I mean, I was basically not afraid of anything. It's like, you want me to photograph burgers, I'll photograph burgers. Menus, whatever. I mean, like the San Diego, they had the rabbits, like those, they put those rabbit statues everywhere in the Chamber of Commerce. Like Chicago had cows at some point. I don't know if they still do. The
It's not the
different. So
same.
it's like that was like a fashion thing that different cities put different statues around the city. So San Diego had rabbits, and we photographed those rabbits for the city. So we actually, I think, like 25 or 30 of them. So I had to learn how to photograph as statues that are extremely shiny, because they're made out of like some kind of plastic material. I don't know, but it was super shiny. So I had to, I guess, develop some products photography skills as well, because like it was so shiny. So I'm like, so we photographed those. I mean, and we just blogged about it. Talk, made some videos about it, and yeah, I mean, we photographed so many cool events. Like we did the San Diego Padres intro, we did the mayor of San Diego. So we, by basically being around people and just telling them like, hey, this is what we do, how can we help you, eventually they not every job was paid, but it gives you the presence in front of the people. It's like, okay, this guy is doing a lot.
I think networking is probably the sort of overarching term that's that's very important, especially when you're first starting out. You really need to build
Yeah.
that network of of people around you who not only necessarily hire you straight away, but people who recommend your services to others, to their
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, right now, I would say 50% or more are ongoing jobs or ongoing recommendations. Either like existing clients, sending new people, or just, people recommending between companies. So the networking and, the building the presence, it has a great, like a snowball effect, right? That you start, slower, but then it builds up, builds up, builds up. And, and then, like after 2 years in San Diego, we did all this effort, and then we moved to Orange County. So we had to start from scratch again. So, so, so
But then at that point you already had a blueprint, so you have an
yeah, yeah, yeah,
advantage
yep, yep,
because
yep.
and of course you've got a filter as well, because you can filter out the actions that didn't lead to any successes. So you already have something to quantify things by. That's
Exactly. No, exactly. And we did the same walking. From the businesses, we reach out. We were a little bit smarter with Google Ads, and at some point, when did we? I don't remember when we finished weddings. We finished photographing weddings a few years ago. But basically, we switched to completely corporate stuff. So but this is it's still the same. Whether if you're wedding, just reach out to venues, vendors, and just bring in. Even if you're not doing headshots, offering like headshots to vendors or photographing something for them will take you a long way.
now it's 2025, and I think photography is in many people's minds under attack from a number of different directions. There's AI on one hand, and then there are smartphones on the other hand. So you hear people say, well, everybody's a photographer now. Nobody's going to hire you because everybody's taking pictures. And especially when it comes to headshots, for example. Would you say that in your experience, has the demand for headshots increased or decreased, or has it remained steady over the last, let's say, 5 years?
To be honest, I don't see any difference in terms of the demand. Um, there, and I'll tell you why. I mean, there's certain genres of photography that definitely are at risk, like stock photography, maybe some, product photography, maybe, but not necessarily, because like the product photography has to be exactly of the product. So it cannot be some interpretation of AI of the product, right? But definitely some stock photography, there's definitely, I'm pretty sure there's, the it shifted to, more there. Event photography, there's no really AI that can, impact this. Like wedding photography, I don't think AI. I mean, for editing, yes, but not for photography, right? And then headshots, you would think is the most, also the big risk, at AI. But from what I've seen, I mean, obviously AI is not there yet to create a believable headshot yet, despite what they claim. Uh, when you see your friend AI headshots, you know right away that it's AI and it's not them. And I think in general, with the big push toward, with AI, people start to get annoyed by AI. That it's not really, it's not real, right? There's almost like the whole trend of making things more organic or more non-perfect. I think I believe we're gonna see this more and more. Um,
Is it like
Now,
gnarly vegetables? I think is that the thing? Like where it needs to look like that carrot came straight from the farm because it's bendy and not perfectly straight and shiny.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's a thing, right? Um, because like and I'm pretty sure, like AI photos, there'll be a way to make them less perfect, to look less perfect. And I'm sure the facial matching will be better as well. But so there are two situations, right? There's a situation for individual headshots. Somebody comes to my studio, I just photograph one person, right? And then there's a scenario whether you do headshots for a large number of people, whether at a conference or for a company, right? Imagine if you're responsible, let's start with the team headshots. Like, somebody at the company, I don't know, let's say Coca-Cola wants to do headshots, and they have 300 people that need new headshots, right? Imagine if you're responsible for that. Because when you do AI headshots, you need every person to take few photos of themselves, and I don't know how many, but at least good number of them, and then submit them somewhere, and then this will generate versions of AI. Who knows what they look like? And then they're gonna, receive it, select it, whatever, right? Imagine if you're responsible for this job, what kind of hassle that is to go after 300 people and chasing them, that they need to take photos of themselves, you know? So that's one way. Or you can hire somebody to take those photos to submit to AI. But if you're going to hire somebody to go from person to person to take those photos to submit to AI, then it's still so many steps, such a hassle. Then you're better off just hiring a professional photographer. They will guide every person. They will have an appointment. They'll come, they'll get it done, and they'll deliver, and everybody will look good, and you're done. Right? It's an effort of hiring somebody. It may take you a couple of hours versus days or weeks of chasing people to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I think AI here, as powerful as it sounds, it doesn't make the job easier. Okay.
That reminds me of when pre-pandemic, I used to focus predominantly on shooting conferences, and one thing that in the beginning, I used to sort of ask myself all the time was like, how come, because most of my clients were international corporates, how come they will fly me to a different country, in Europe or wherever, for me to take photographs, for the duration of the conference, 3 days, 4 days, rather than hiring somebody, because, they would have to pay for my flights, my transportation, they would have to, obviously pay my fee, they would have to pay for my hotel, blah, blah, blah. Rather than just hiring somebody in, Budapest, because there are plenty of fantastic headshot, whatever, event photographers. And you know, and in the beginning, I used to wonder, like, what is that? I mean, how does that make sense? It's so much more expensive for them to fly me over there and you know, and cater and house me and all the rest of it. Um, and it's a little while later that I spoke to somebody who was involved in actually organizing a particular conference, and he said, you know, the reality is, there are so many, literally hundreds, probably thousands of things you have to do, you know, on an infinite bullet point list of tasks, and hiring the photographer is one bullet point on these hundreds of bullet points. And if I can just email you, tell you what the job's about, and you say, yes, I can do it, I can take that off the box and I can move on to the next thing. If I had to then go and find somebody in Budapest and vet them and blah, 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 and yada, 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 it
Exactly.
would take
Yeah.
absolutely forever. And I can, you know, and of course it sort of dawned on me at the time. I was, well, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Okay, the
And not-
expenses. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, then press here for the full episode in glorious Technicolor. Hey, and don't forget to subscribe.